Hey everybody, welcome to the Earn It Podcast, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about what you do when you fail an exam at nursing school. What exactly do you go from there? How should you think about it now? How should you think about tests and exams or schoolwork going forward? I specifically want to talk about exams rather than schoolwork because I think it applies differently. For a lot of different folks at various different nursing schools, your test scores matter a lot because you have to make specific test scores in order to continue in some cases. Some cases it's just you get whatever score in the class and then you can move on. But getting back to it, what exactly do you do whenever you fail a test at nursing school? The first thing that you do is you're going to let yourself have whatever initial reaction you decide to have, whether that's blaming yourself, blaming others, whatever reaction you're going to initially have, that's the reaction you're going to initially have. You need to go through that process, but you need to go through that process as quickly as possible because you have to take very specific actions in order to ensure that you continue, in order to ensure that you get the most out of nursing school while making sure that you pass the test, because there are a lot of different things that you can do in order to cram and do better on your next tests, right? But that's not going to cut it when it's time for a final exam. That's not going to cut it when it's you and a patient in a room and you're the one that's responsible for that patient, whether it be months or years from now, depending on where you are in your nursing program. That's not going to matter. So the first thing that you're going to do is you need to not blame yourself from an intelligence perspective, okay? If you made it into nursing school, you are smart enough to make it through nursing school. No matter what you might think, no matter how many countless hours you put into studying for the test that you just failed, trust me when I say it's not an intelligence issue. It's a studying issue. What you need to kind of hone in on, what you need to criticize, is not necessarily yourself and your overall intelligence level, whatever you think your IQ is, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Because, yeah, I will admit that there is a difference, between people and their intelligence levels, not specifically IQ. Let's not go down the rabbit hole of how pointless IQ scores are right now. But what I'm getting at is that there is obviously a difference in aptitude from person to person. But the reason why that's not an issue is because your nursing program has taken meticulous steps in order to ensure that the people that are getting into the program have the capability, the intelligence capability, and frankly, the discipline in order to make it through nursing school. Now, here's where some of this doesn't necessarily apply. If you fail this test and it's because some major life event happened that literally ate up days of your time, hours of your time that you were going to spend studying, you didn't spend the usual amount of time studying that you meant to, solely because a life event happened, then you're not going to do anything. That's what I want you to realize. Let's say a relative got sick, passed away, you lost a job, a relative lost a job, you had a sick child, whatever, to where you could not, for an entire day at least, or multiple days in a row, you had absolutely no capability to spend time studying because you either had to go to class, you had to show up for a lab, you had to show up for a clinical, but you had to be there for whatever life event happened. What do you do for the next test? Okay, you don't do anything different. So if that's you and it's because you didn't have the necessary time in order to do it because of life events, you didn't do anything wrong and you need to go ahead and stop here. Okay, you need to not even continue listening to this because this is not going to apply with you. It's not going to apply to you. Now, if you did not spend enough time studying because you procrastinated, it seems like the answer is simple, and that's to not procrastinate next time. That's easy for me to say, right? Easy for you to say for next time, even talking about or with or to yourself. But it's not necessarily that easy. What you need to do, if I'm talking to the procrastinators now, believe me, I'm going through all the scenarios here. If you procrastinated and chose not to study an adequate amount of time due to a lack of motivation or giving into lack of motivation or quote unquote laziness, it's not as simple as, oh, well, I'll do better next time. What you need to do is identify every single factor that led to you being capable of not studying for the adequate amount of time. All of the distractions, you need to remove them. Let me explain this. Even if that means you get rid of your smartwatch, even if that means you get rid of your smartphone for a period of time, pop that SIM card into a flip phone and put your smartphone somewhere else. Whatever the distraction is, if your distraction is at home and you're able to not be at home, then do that. You need to go elsewhere. You need to figure out and analyze the last week or two for this test. And you need to think about and be honest with yourself about what did I spend time doing instead of studying? And you need to work at removing those distractions going forward. Again, because even folks, and I've done it, I've seen it, I've heard it, even folks that spent, for a big test, a total of like an hour studying, and they failed the test, they're still down on themselves about, oh my gosh, I'm not smart enough, I can't make it through this, I don't have what it takes, I shouldn't be in this program, I don't belong here, I'm never going to be a nurse, I'm never going to pass the NCLEX, I'm not going to pass this class, I'm no good. Everybody's going to think I'm a failure. All of my classmates are going to make fun of me after I have to repeat another semester or apply again. Maybe I won't even get in again whenever I apply, yada, 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 yada. There's 100,000 things that are going through your head. But that's not the issue. And you need to first and foremost realize that that's not the issue. You have to have a little bit of self-awareness here, because if you, by admission, did not spend even close the amount of time studying that you should have, unless you have suddenly became a genius overnight, okay, there's no use in being hard on yourself for that. If you need to be hard on yourself for anything, be hard on yourself for that discipline, and again, remove those distractions, so on and so forth. Now, let's get to it. You spent countless hours working away. You spent countless hours studying, and you still failed the exam. Now, here's the thing. First of all, what you need to realize is you, up until this point, have never had such a high threshold to quote unquote pass. If you up until now, if you made a 75 on a test, and you were satisfied with that for one reason or the other, chances are, if you are in a nursing program, you did not make 75s consistently on tests for prerequisites. Chances are, but just in case that is you, and what happens is you built habits that got you a desired outcome. Well, now that desired outcome has changed. So now a 75 is failing. Okay? And what you have to realize is that you're not actually doing, if that's you, that's a very specific kind of use case, is I never really had to study and I passed my prerequisites with 75, 80, whatever, and I put about the same amount of effort in and I failed. Realizing that you're failing with a score in the 70s or in the high 60s in any other class, in any other situation, that is still passing a test. You need to think about that again before you get down on yourself. Okay? If that's you, be self-aware of the fact that your prerequisites was a chance for you to hone in your studying skills and to build habits that you still have right now. And those habits previously got you passing scores. Those same habits are no longer going to get you passing scores. Okay? Now, if you were the kind, now this might be most of you, nursing students, you did great in all your prerequisites. You did fantastic. You made A's or high B's or just B's, whatever it is, and you put in that amount of effort to pass this test or more, and you still did not pass, what you have to realize is that you have a different level of understanding that you need to have now. Previously, with most prerequisites, your requirement was to memorize a lot of data and very quickly. Anatomy, physiology, microbiology, it was no joke. You had a lot of things that you had to memorize. Well, now you have a lot of things to memorize, but you have to also apply it to situations. And these situations that you're being asked about are not, your perception is that these are quote unquote tricky questions, when really these are actually just questions that you're not used to. They're in a style that you're not used to answering. If you're in your first semester, you failed a test, what you need to realize is, after you get done doing what I'm telling you to do so that you can pass the rest of this semester, is that these questions will begin to get easier and easier and easier. The job of a nursing program is to prepare you to have the appropriate skills, critical thinking, hands-on skills, soft skills, hard skills and soft skills, all the skills, in order to show up for your first day of your nurse residency, wherever you finally get a nursing job, and to not look like a complete moron, and to know your stuff. You need to be able to talk and walk some of the walk, and be able to take instruction on very specific things for whatever unit or whatever office, for whatever company you work for. That is the job, one of the jobs of nursing school. The other job of nursing school is to get you to pass the NCLEX exam. And the NCLEX exam, if you were to try to take that style questions with things that you already know now, you would not do good. Okay? So some of them will be NCLEX style questions, but they're not some of them are going to be more difficult than things that you would see on an NCLEX. Some of them will be worded not as clear as you would get on an NCLEX. And here's the big difference. Your teacher working very hard to make your tests. I say that as someone that used to make tests for a living. The people writing the questions for the NCLEX, you're getting a minimum of 75 questions, a maximum of 150, 200. I don't know what the maximum is. Let's just take the 75 questions. You, in order to get, let's say there's a pool of like 300 total questions. Let's just say that. That's not one or two people making those questions. In order to get those questions on those exams, there are multiple steps that happen. I don't work for the company. I never worked on the board. I never worked and been affiliated with the folks that make the NCLEX exam. But what I can tell you is, from my background, what I know, the minimum that happens is there are a multitude of people that submit a multitude of different questions and answers. Those are debated by experts in the field. Those are double checked by literature reviews and what kind of content is being fed to nursing students, what kind of content has been vetted and peer reviewed and evidence-based, and those are all debated. Now, and then questions are chosen, and then they are tested on students taking other versions of NCLEX exams, and the scores of those questions are put through statistical analyses. And from those statistical analyses, you get another review to see if it fits a certain place in a bell curve, and then it is rated for its level of difficulty, and it's categorized in a specific field that's required for different exam objectives on the NCLEX. That's just an educated shot in the dark on what happens with your NCLEX questions. Your teacher is trying to emulate NCLEX style questions on their own without any help, maybe a couple of colleagues, but it's not a team of dozens and dozens of people going through multiple reviews at once. All they know is I need to make a test, and this test can't be the same as last semester or the semester before or the semester before or the semester before. And so you have to constantly make questions that are different on information that doesn't change too terribly much. And those have to be difficult enough for you to have to think about it and for it to somewhat emulate the difficulty in an NCLEX exam while being possible for you to answer, while also following the material that they are responsible for providing you for. Now, that might not sound super, super difficult if you are one of those people that are listening right now and you're not feeling that great because you failed the test. But what I'm trying to say to you is imagine being a nurse for years. Now imagine teaching it. And all of that, there's a lot of stuff that you have from your personal experience that you just know. And there's some that's pulled from a book and there's some that's put in a PowerPoint. For you, as someone that's responsible for providing instruction to a group of students and then writing a test for them, it's actually more difficult than you think to separate out what you can reason out based on your intuition, your experience, versus what you fairly presented to your cohort. There are a lot of different factors there. So that's one thing about the difficulty of the questions and why you didn't do as good, even if you are studying really hard. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Okay, you studied really hard. You made straight A's in every single one of your prereqs. And you made good grades in, let's say, all of the other tests so far in nursing school. You feel like you understand the material really well. You memorized every one of the flashcards that you made. Now what's the issue? Again, pause for a second and think, what is not the issue? It's your intelligence. What I can guarantee you is, as evidenced by your test score, is you did not properly study for the test. That might sound really simple. It might sound a little crass. It might sound a little short. But the simple fact of it is your job as a student now to get down to a science how you are going to precisely prepare for a given test. If you studied and you didn't pass a test, that means that your study methods just need to be tweaked. And that's actually not that big of a deal. You can tweak your study methods. You can schedule out your time better. You can experiment with different study methods. You can talk with people that are experts on study methods, tell them what you're doing, tell them what happened, tell them your past, tell them your present, and they can give you suggestions on exactly what to do in order to change that. Learning is a science. It is figured the hell out. Every aspect of how everyone learns specific subjects is all completely figured out and has been studied and has been peer reviewed. The science is out there. It's your job, literally. For some of you, I work part-time. You know what my full-time job is? My full-time job is learning and studying and going to school and trying to hang on to this information for dear life forever. That's my job. You need to figure out how you're going to do that. So you need to think about every single thing that you've done. Take into account when you're studying. Are you bolusing? Are you taking all your material and you're not studying it until the week of the exam and then you're spending 3, 4 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour long study sessions? First of all, that goes into, you feeling burnt out quicker, but that is not a useful study method. I can do a whole episode on various study methods, and I did do one podcast on the quote unquote the best, which was the Feynman method. It's just, no matter what your learning style is, it is just the best way to go. So I have an episode on that. Just look at the episode. I think it's like the best study method, whatever. And I can kind of go into it, but that, maybe you don't like that. Maybe that doesn't fit your lifestyle. Maybe that doesn't fit your schedule. Again, go and consult, research on different ways to study. Research. When's the last time you said how to study for pharmacology in nursing school? How to properly study for med surg or for pathophysiology in nursing school, right? When's the last time you actually did that? Another thing that I highly recommend, if time is an issue, because here's the thing, you might need to add things to your study methods. You might need to do additional things, but you don't have time for those additional things, right? So what has to happen, right? Let's put on our RN critical thinking hats, our future RNs, okay? And critically think about what we have to do if we don't have any more time to do anything additional, but we have to do additional things in order to succeed with our study methods. The only thing to do is take some things away. I had to recently do this, not because I failed an exam, but because I have a very big problem with making sure that I'm spending my time as efficiently as humanly possible. So, me personally, hopefully you guys don't know who I am, doing very well. However, I went and saw one of these academic coaches just so I can improve it, because it's only going to get more intense. If you're in first semester, it's just going to get worse. If you're in second, it's going to get worse. If you're in third, you made it. You're fine. Your next semester's, your job is preparing for NCLEX while you do precepting and some papers. Won't go into it. Okay. There's going to be more assignments that come up. So you're going to need to eliminate things. You have a process. And when you think about that, most people use some kind of flashcard. This is my own little 2 cents. Most people, eventually, you're going through flashcards. Some people, you just look at your notes. But some people, what you do is you might read a book, then you'll look at some PowerPoint slides, then you'll go to lecture, you'll write handwritten notes either on the PowerPoint or in your own words, and then eventually you'll go back to that, and then you'll make flashcards out of it, and then only at that point can you begin to study. Now, you may not do all of those things. You may not do any of those things. You may do more than those things. So if you cannot tweak things because you don't have time from a perspective of adding additional study methods, what you need to do is eliminate some of those steps. If you absolutely, look, pharmacology is one of them. If you're not in pharm and this doesn't apply to you, I'm sorry. But there is still some things that you need to put in a flashcard form, right? You need to just put it directly in flashcard form. Like, yeah, writing it down helps. But not if you're not studying that material until like 2 days before the exam. Because then you have a serious problem, even if you pass the exam. You're not going to remember that in a week. And if you have a final, God help you, okay? So, that's the thing. Focus on the study methods. You're smart enough to be in the program. You're going to be a great nurse. There's a lot of nitty-gritty things that you have to learn right now that I can assure you that nurses working in the field do not know anymore. I went and spoke to an RN the other day that graduated fairly recently. And I remember I was studying for my first pharmacology test and was going through different pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamic. They had not one clue what the hell I was talking about. And this individual is an extremely good nurse, moving up very fast in the world. Now, if you go and talk to an ICU nurse, there might be, some more of that they would understand. But the fact of it is that we're going through and we have to learn the nitty-gritty of everything. So that's another thing that you have to realize is that you, at some point, you're not going to remember every single detail about how many times did you have to remember or reference or have completely memorized something like the Krebs cycle? Okay. A year from now, if you still remember if you can still write out every little detail, 2 years from now, when you're a nurse, you're probably not going to be able to Whenever prompted, at a moment's notice, I hand you a whiteboard and I hand you a marker, and you get up on that whiteboard and you draw out the entire Krebs cycle, and you can explain it to a 5-year-old. You might be able to do that now. You definitely did it if you passed the test on the Krebs cycle. It's the same way right now. You need to accept the fact that some things are going to go to the wayside. That's going to be a natural thing that happens. But you also shouldn't be cramming. Because that foundation still works that's in your brain. The nitty gritty, what I keep calling the nitty gritty, is necessary in order for you to grasp the concepts that you're going to remember forever. So again, the big takeaway is I'm not a big come, let's sit in an office and cry together and hold your hand or anything like that. But mental health is an important aspect, and let's face it, people are already telling you that you're going to feel stupid for the entire time you're in nursing school. A lot of the time you don't feel intelligent. And here's the thing, folks. You are learning. You're not supposed to just know it all and know it all right now. Your job right now is to be learning. So what you need to realize is a failed test also, if you want to talk about a different kind of mindset of it, a failed test also is a learning experience and a learning opportunity. It doesn't mean game over. I made comments in a previous, I'm sorry, I don't know which podcast episode it is. Maybe it was one of the morning motivation episodes. I don't know, but there was something about what happens if you completely fail out of nursing school. Even then, it doesn't mean the end of the road. Okay? It doesn't mean the end of the road. Life happens. So again, if it's life, don't try to stress about reinventing the wheel, because your cause was from a life event that took time away from you. If you don't have enough time, you can focus on time management. If you had all the time in the world and you spent plenty of time studying and you still didn't pass, you are going to pick apart your study methods. And you're going to do it right now. You're not going to wait until it's close to the next test. You're not going to wait until it's convenient for you. Now is convenient for you. If you work on the weekends or you work a couple days a week and you're listening to this on the way to or from, you're going to lose sleep over figuring this shit out right now because it's your responsibility. So thank you so much for listening to the Earn It podcast. It was really great. There is a form in the description of this podcast. Please fill it out if you want to be on it. Please go ahead and follow, share with your friends. Kind of spread the word. If I can help anybody make it through their day a little bit easier, that would be great. Thanks so much for listening.